Hi, I'm Matt, and today we're going to go over Timeline page in AI. So, to start us off, to navigate to the page, go to the bottom right-hand corner AI logo, click that, click the Perform, and then the Timeline. And that brings you to this page here. On the top left, we've got our Timeline Select. We can save and load multiple timelines and jump between them as needed. And on the right, we've got our Queue Track. And this allows us to populate it with queues on the timeline. And on the bottom, this is our physical timeline itself. Timeline's really useful if you've got a show that's repeated every single night and you want to have that same video playback exactly the same. So, to populate our timeline, we will create a layer. In this case, we'll use layer 1, and that puts a track into our timeline. Now, to add media, we simply go to Windows Explorer and drag and drop. And you'll see that if you try to drag it anywhere else in the timeline, it'll go red. This means that it can't be dropped there. But if it goes gray, that means it's a valid place for that video file. And there we are. So now we can play, and you can see that file is playing back to the timeline. Now, if we want to add some parameters to control, you can see we have brightness here already. Click on the layer, and this star icon appears in the bottom left-hand side. You can see there's lots of different parameters that we can add to this layer, but for now we'll just go with all. And you can see that populate that section in the timeline. Now, to change these parameters, first unlock that line in the left-hand side here, and then we can right-click to add keyframes to it. So this created points, which we can then right-click and edit and change the color of this clip. So if I go all red for this first one, right-click to close, right-click to open another one, we can go all green for this one, and then right-click to close, right-click to open the next one, we can go blue. And you can see, if we play back this timeline, the color of the clip changes as we go through it. And you can do the same with any of the other attributes as well. So brightness, we can add in a few here, and right-click to change those, or just the physical time in which it happens. Now, all the different tracks, we try to give a visual representation of how they work. So the color, you get to see the color physically on the track, and the brightness, you get to see the level of the brightness as it goes on. So now the other kind of track that we can add is our control track. Now here you've got lots of different parameters. Currently this is just a pause. And what this means is when you reach that point, the timeline will pause until you hit enter to continue it. There's also a stop, which returns it back to the beginning and stops. The rewind or restart sends it back to the beginning of the timeline at time 00 and continues to play. The parachute allows you to jump to a specific position in the timeline, which you can change at the bottom here. And then we also have time code support. So you can choose to either listen or stop listening to timecode in the timeline. And then this file folder allows us to load up a new timeline, so you could have individual timelines for your songs in your set list, for example, and have them loaded up and changed. But we'll just go back to this pause for now. The third track is the queue track in blue. And this allows us to right-click and create queues to our timeline, and you can see them populate in the top right-hand corner. Now, if we play our timeline, you can see that as it passes a queue, it goes red, and then as it goes to the next one, the previous ones go gray. So the color shows us what our current queue is, what our past queues are, and what our future queues are. And if we wish to jump between them, we can simply click on them in the top right-hand corner here. Another thing we can do is right-click on our queues and name them. So if you want a visual representation of memory of what your queues do, you can name them and see them when you hover over them in the top right-hand corner. Now, because we've used layer 1, that has locked it out from our main performance page. And you can see that by going to Performance, and that layer is red. That means it cannot be manually edited from now on. It's being controlled by the timeline. But what it does mean is that all of the other layers around it are still controllable in the Performance page. So you can bring in media on top or underneath your timeline, and it gives you that flexibility of control when working to timecode or in a timeline. Thanks guys, and I'll see you soon.